Hello, and welcome to Writers Group Therapy.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Roshni. We're writers helping writers with whatever writing ailments you might have.
Whether it's related to your craft or your career, we can help.
Are you ready for your session?
The
The doctors
doctors
are
are
in.
in.
Welcome to the show. Today we have speaker and young adult fantasy romance author Cyndi Brec, aka Romantasy, who's currently finishing the third book in her upcoming series, The Therans. And her short story, Romance on the Run, can be found in the anthology Love on the Lakefront, Romantic Tales from the Great Lakes. Welcome, Cyndi. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate it.
Yay. And we found out pre-podcast, Tom, Cyndi, you guys are neighbors.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
I'm in near Cleveland. Where are you?
I'm near the Worcester area,
Ah, yes, Worcester,
agricultural town.
not Worcester. Worcester.
Yes, yes, yes. You got it. You got to say
Yeah,
that right.
you're
Yes.
still Northeast Ohio technically, so
Oh,
a
yeah. I
little
love this
further
area.
south, but
Yeah.
yeah. All right.
Yeah,
Welcome.
and we'll talk about that because it apparently plays into your series. But first, tell us how you got started as an author.
How do you say? I've always been since high school an avid reader, and just I was reading so much that I was like, well, I'll give myself a chance to write something. I started writing, joined a group, and I can't tell you how much the difference a group makes. They help you so much fine tune, polish, and grow. But I just went from an avid reader to into hobby writing, and then it has spiraled into some many blessings, really good avenues, and that's just pretty much where I've gone. I always say it's always my passion that has steered things in my faith, and a lot of stuff. But I kind of think writing and reading's kind of like my ticket to adventure, and I love adventure. So
Right off the bat, you're mentioning faith. Am I saying it right? The Therans? Is that how you say the series
yeah.
name? Okay. Is the Therans a faith-based fantasy?
Actually, I did not write it as a faith-based fantasy. I'm a Christian. However, I wrote this more for the mainstream market, but I do have, it's a clean romance. I do have elements of it in there. So, but it's not heavy on that. No. Mm-mm. But I wanted to write something that I know my kids would read, that would be adventurous and stuff like that, with good characters, solid characters, that kind of stuff. So, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
That's cool. So let's chat a little bit about that because, fun fact about me, I actually came from a Christian music background before I started everything else that I'm doing. But I remember one of the issues I had in that world was writing for the audience where it's like you're straddling that line of like, well, it's not churchy enough for, the Christian crowd, but it's too churchy for the people who don't go to church. So did you have an issue with that when you were writing the Therans, like finding that audience that would, you know what I'm saying? Like that would read it straddling both worlds?
I, yeah, I kind of did, but you know what? I kind of just, I wanted to I wanted to write what I could read and what I would read, something that reflected how I felt. And I tried not to get steered off that path. I think that's the easiest and safest way to respond. I think everybody has their interpretations of what is okay to write about, what isn't okay to write about. And, you start putting supernatural stuff in a book, which there is a level of positivity. Supernatural is not a bad word. I mean, it's not. But you do have to be careful, and it can be difficult. But I write what I'm comfortable with. I write what I know, um, and I will admit, by the third book, I wasn't writing what I knew.
I
So,
mean, you're currently working on the third book, I thought, right?
well, actually, I did finish the third book. Yes.
Yay!
So,
That's awesome.
yeah, so there's actually 6 books in the entire series. 3 of them are prequel,
Mhm.
and I could get into explaining that, but the other 3 are all novels, and there's almost 400,000 words for all of it.
Wow. I guess, yeah, this would be a good time to say exactly like a quick pitch of what is the Therans about.
Okay, so interestingly enough, the Therans is a young adult fantasy romance with, like I said, elements of faith and stuff in there. But I like to say that it's kind of like it's got a tone of like an Allison Goodman, Dark Days kind of YA with a spellbreaker kind of peppered in there. But it is about a young girl who loses everything. Her parents, and I don't want to get into the whole backstory about that, but she absolutely loses everything. She's pretty much left as an orphan, and she's lives with her grandparents. And basically, she tries to seek out the origins of her powers, and she stumbles on to a conspiracy, and it's she uncovers a sinister plot, but in the world that she's seeking and learning about, it's a world that's actually soaked in archaeological mystery. So there's lots of elements of history within the series. It's definitely a different type of book because you will have real historical elements to this world, and then I've tried to go in and like legend sleuth and conjure up and twist little facts that were facts into something that could be totally spun a different direction, so it could kind of spiral off and take you into a total different element. But it's I think it's a definite book that kids will engage with, and actually a lot of young adults, not just young adults but adults. So
That you said the magic words legend sleuth, and I saw that in your bio, and I was like, what is a legend sleuth?
you know I get that a lot. Okay, look at it like this. A legend sleuth is a detective. Okay, someone who likes to go uncover secrets, or the secrets within legends, folklore, and myths. I I feel like I'm always driven by the curiosity of something, and so I like to get down and deep into history and culture, and I want to at the same time respect it. But I love diving deep into the legends and the myths of old stories and seeking to discover like a nugget or a hidden facet that might be a forgotten secret, or I don't know, maybe a lost knowledge. But as an author, I take that and I twist that legend or what I've uncovered by being that detective, that legend sleuth, and I twist that and reshape that understanding into something that can be really impacting into the storyline and actually moving the story plot forward. But it could be something so significant as, let's say, oh, Medusa. She can freeze people by looking at her. But what happens if that knowledge really wasn't the truth, but there was something else to Medusa's power, and in a hypothetical situations her power was gained by this avenue. So I took that after doing a legend sleuthing, I took that power and I revamped it into something a little bit more clear and concise, but to fit my storyline.
Oh, that's so cool. I actually write sci-fi, and so I know what you're talking about. Like, I try to do what I call grounded sci-fi, where I use actual science. I try to be, you know, grounded in reality, so that it doesn't take um, the reader too far out, or the viewer, because I'm writing screenplays, viewer too far out of, you know, their own comfort zone of reality, so that they're engaged in it more uh, directly and more confidently.
Right, right. Because a reader does better when they can understand it, or they have a familiarity to it, or even if it's an actual historical site or something, they do so much better at grasping it and getting grounded and anchored into that setting that you've created. But yeah, that's kind of interesting. I appreciate
Mm.
that insight and stuff that you shared.
The other thing I was going to ask you about was, I saw on your website that you have some short stories. Is it Scarred Secrets and Scarred Lies?
Yes,
And they're listed as prequels. So
correct.
do is it better for people to read those first, or read them after, when the novels come out? I guess And when did you write them? Did you write the short stories first, and they were the impetus for the novels, or was it like a world building you did after you wrote the novels?
Actually, wrote the first novel, which is The Secrets Beneath Scars, and then I wrote book two. It wasn't until later that I wrote the prequels because I kind of felt like something was missing,
Hmm.
but yet you don't want to heavy load back information. So, and actually, I just finished an origin story, which I'll get to that in a minute. But book three was the last. So basically, out of the six books, I started with the first book novel, the second book novel, went and created the a couple of the short stories, and then I wrote the third book, and then I went back and did the origin story. So, you know how like Batman Begins, you've got all these Batman movies out there. I went back and created that origin story as the last book. But I kind of felt like now that I have a complete series, and those prequels add to little filler things. And this is the reason why those prequels are so significant. And no, you don't have to read the prequels to understand the story. You could start with book one and go on to book two and book three. And if you find later on you want to read those, that's fine. The significance is Romance on the Run, which is out now. I did a recover of it and everything like that because I did put it in the anthology, but I did a recover of it and I'm releasing that this November. But that is the origin story. It just kind of sets things up. But the interesting thing is Scarred Secrets. That's all written as a journal entry, kind of like Diaries of a Wimpy Kid. You know, it is from her handwriting. It's her heart. It's what her internal thoughts are, what she's dealing with. And then Scarred Lies gives you like a little taste of two different short stories on how some things are set up, just enough to build off of. But like I said, you don't have to read the prequels. I think they're just complementary pieces to the book series, the trilogy. But I kind of like the fact that each book has its short story prequel has its own design, but they complement the main series. The main series is, like I said, it's almost just shy of 400,000 words, so there's a lot to it. But I don't know. It's just kind of fun, just writing them and everything like that. And I think there's solid information. The blessing is that I've been able to write these to where I haven't been under pressure and I've been able to make sure that they're all cohesive with one another.
Which is so important in world building.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, especially when you're writing, I don't have, the Theron series does not deal with one world, it deals with multiple worlds from one particular point of view.
But it sounds like the process to get it to publication was also very vast and crazy. I know you mentioned being agented at one point and then something happened with the agent, now you're currently pitching. Can you talk a little bit about that whole entire process behind the scenes?
Yeah, yeah, I can. Boy, so for a while I was querying and looking at doing the traditional route. At the same time, I straddled the idea of self-publishing and stuff like that. And I figured, and this was like years ago. I figured, okay, I'll do whatever comes first, where I'm led. And then it's like all of a sudden in 1 week I had several people I pitched, seven literary agents, and then five of them were interested in the book. And the next day, I had met this great guy who became my agent, and he ended up. I met him at a conference a couple years prior to this week that I had pitched these seven literary agents, and he just reached out to me in the middle of nowhere and said, "Hey, I want to represent you. You haven't launched your story or anything like this." And I was like, "No, uh-uh." So, long story made short, fast forward, well, a year and 9 months later, things just weren't working out because he started his literary company. But it's more so that it was the industry that is ever changing, the writing industry that's ever changing, that he just closed his doors. But when I was underneath his management, I learned a lot. I learned how, even though he was pitching my book to publishers, I shouldn't stop on my own behalf and wait. And he was so encouraging. Actually, his name is Jonas Saul, but he was so very, very encouraging. He's like, Cyndi, keep going. So because of that, I started a newsletter. And with the help of my friends, because they had all the experience, I started a newsletter. I got 6, 7 endorsements right now, but I didn't give up. I kept carving out a path moving forward with the hopes that whatever door the Lord opened, that's the door that I would walk through. So, and still, I don't have a publisher right now or anything. I don't have an agent, but I'm moving forward. I intend to launch, like I said, the prequel starting in November, and the main series in February. Interestingly enough, somebody did reach out, a publisher, but you know what? I'm not waiting. Um, if something materializes, something will materialize. I'm just moving forward and just thinking that this is the best route. Too many doors have opened up with some meeting some incredible people. The writing industry has got some of the nicest, gentlest souls, nurturing souls. It's wild, but you can meet so many neat people, and there's just a lot of I don't know, fulfillment from it.
I
So,
totally agree. I love the author community. It's so sweet. Like, I came from, like, a screenwriting background, and, like, it's a lot harder in the screenwriting world, I think, because there's more people involved. So you're just like, "Oh my gosh," you know? So I really enjoy being in the author community. I totally get you on that. So it sounds like you're moving forward on the self-publishing
yeah,
angle then.
I think so. Yeah, because like I said, nothing has totally materialized, and even if something in the traditional route materializes, and they're great people too. Don't get me wrong, but they have certain quotas, they have expectations, and that could change real quick too. I have more of an opportunity moving forward, um, and getting stuff done than I think I would. Going the traditional route, you know? And like I said, si- I have met some really, really fascinating indie authors, self published authors, and they've got their own journey. And I'm telling you, sometimes I can't tell a difference between a traditional and a self published book, because there's a lot of quality self published books out on the market. And I do not think they get enough credit for it.
Amen to that. It's true. It's true. There's some really, like, great stories, great ideas, and original stuff, and you're like, "Why is it getting passed over?" So I totally yeah, I
Well,
agree with everything you're saying.
yeah, you come from like the world of script writing and stuff like that. Look at how many remakes they make on a movie, like
Mhm.
a Spider-Man, Batman, and yet they had to go to writing origin stories. But however, I could pick up a book, especially different fantasy and science fiction books. And yeah, there's overlapping tropes or something, but there's an original concept. There's something original that makes that, like that ticket to adventure, that story that is so engaging and original. But yet they're not picking those, like Netflix or Disney, they're not picking those books up to make movies out of them. It's the revamp of the new one. So if you really want to get something fresh and good and solid in your hands, I really think reading is where it's at. Indie authors are fantastic. Just like I said, traditional art. But yeah, I've just really come to believe that the more and more I'm surrounded by them.
And speaking of author community, so you're also a book reviewer as well, and obviously as authors, we're also book lovers, but how do you balance building your author community while still being honest about the books you're reviewing?
Ha ha. That's an interesting. That that's an interesting one. Yeah. So I do review for a small press, and I just started that earlier this year. Well, January I think it was. So it's only one book review. The advantages, I pick the books I want to review. He gave me stipulations, which was that it had to be science fiction and fantasy, and it had to be by indie authors because this is his business, his company. But out of respect to the people, I pick the book that I want to review. I know that it's going to be subjective. However, as a reviewer, I cannot make any mistakes, and I have to know that an honest feedback and or the word honest review, there's a power to that word, right? For reviewers, and I must frame things so that I critique things tactfully. Um, so it's hard, but sometimes you have to keep your professional role as a book reviewer separate from your personal life, and then your reviews are based on the book and not your personal feelings towards that particular author. I've also found that I believe that in highlighting positive aspects of the quality of their work, that it really helps because that then books do get a review, and then the author is recognized for its strengths, the story is recognized for its strengths, but that does not mean overall that I give them a glowing review because I want it to be real, but I do try to be positive about it. I think ultimately I try to maintain like an integrity and foster a positive relationship between the reader and the author who wrote the story, because my voice is ultimately like a medium, to direct people to their books and stuff like this. This small press that I write for, he's got a really active following. So is it a large group? Not huge, but it's definitely, he's got a solid active group, but evidently he's got people that follow him and stuff like that. So but it's not easy. Life is writing, doing reviews, all of that is a balancing act, and you just try to move forward with integrity and honesty for everybody when you do a book.
Which I think is totally fair. I mean, I know it stings when I get like a one-star review, but as long as they have like good feedback, I'm like, okay, I'll keep that in mind. I should probably ask this controversial question. Tag the authors in poor reviews or no? What's your stance?
I don't know about that. I definitely tagged authors when I have written positive reviews,
Mhm.
but that's like on my own social media. Um, when I do it for Tom's Press, I don't tag anybody, but like I'm not out to take anybody down. I'm out to lift somebody up with honesty. And at the same time, if I do find something in a book review when I'm doing a book review that I don't engage with, or they were head hopping or something like that, I'll point it out. Okay, so this is like a big thing for me. I am dyslexic. So I don't do well with punctuation, grammar, and I transpose things. So you would probably, if somebody found my book, which I've had them professionally edited big time, but if they were to look at my book and initially, if it was at first, they would have been like, oh my gosh, how can we get through this? You have to take the good with the bad. But I've put my best foot forward to make sure that the quality of my work is great, and it's been professionally edited by two companies. And I even had one of the ladies that edited my book. She's a sensitivity reader. I even had that done. I mean, I've gone that extra mile to make sure that everything's polished and stuff. So I think when somebody else is getting their book out there and getting it reviewed and stuff, I hope that they've gone that extra mile because I know where my weaknesses are. And so I would only want to make sure that I'm moving forward with having things professionally done so that I'm looking the best. And I would want them to look the best. So
Totally agree. I think sometimes as indies, we have to be better than the trads because you know what I mean? Like we're held up to that high of a standard and maybe higher because we are indie. So I totally agree with you on that. I hate reading my reviews. So I don't like it when people tag me unless it's like a nice one because I'm like, I don't want to know. Like I as an audiobook narrator, when I read like bad reviews of my work, I'm like, oh, so I just yeah, I don't like being tagged.
It's
So
I guess it's different from getting notes in a screenplay because we do that
mhm.
in our group, and I have another writing group, and that's productive and it helps you go back and work on it. But once your book's written, getting those reviews is a lot harder to deal with because it's not like you can go back and rewrite it at that point.
I mean, you can, but you probably
Good, but
shouldn't.
probably shouldn't. Yeah.
Well, I think you're right. You could look at like what you're getting in a writing group as a that critique as a review. I know when I initially first started out, I had a really good traditional author friend of mine. I think at the time she might have had 30 books underneath her belt.
Wow.
She looked at my first manuscript and she wrote 15 pages back to me and she said, Cyndi, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Oh.
But I was just getting into this seriously. She wrote 15 pages back to me and she says, you've got to look at it like this, this, and this. Well, she wasn't in my industry, but even if she wasn't in my industry as far as my genre field, she had an idea of what she was doing. So I took 2 days to highlight those 15 pages. I did a lot of soul searching. Was this my direction? Because, like I felt like I could be held back because of dyslexia and all this kind of stuff, but I didn't. I like to say that I pray my way through the day or life. But anyhow, so I ended up ultimately having 6 books, 3 main novels and 3 short ones. But if it hadn't been somebody like her that cared enough to write 15 pages of Cyndi, you need to rethink this, or this might be a better suggestion, or something like that, I wouldn't be here today. If it wasn't my writing group, and I count these as a form of reviews. When they're critiquing you in a group, that's a review. If it wasn't, the Wayne Novelist Guild that is saying, Cyndi, I don't agree with this, or Cyndi, there's a plot hole here, or Cyndi, this is a better way to creatively measure this. I grow better because people care enough to say the truth. But I think all of that, like I said before, has to be weighed out and balanced in a tactful manner, because you cannot stifle or smother somebody's creativity, because if you do, you're not lifting them up. But at the same time, you have to be honest with your comments, and I think there's a professional way to do that. So
So true. Agree with all of that. We have a whole episode on notes and giving notes, and yes to everything you just said.
Yep.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Cyndi, this has been such a wonderful chat. If people want to find you, if they want to find your books, how do they do that?
actually, you could look me up at www.cyndibrec.com. And then I have stuff there, but I'm on social media underneath Cyndi Brec, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Hey, that's not my forte. I'm just getting used to that. And actually, I have a newsletter, Legends, Myths, and Lies. And if you really want to engage with me, that's probably a good spot, because then I give you a link in there that if you want to reach out to me in an email, but you have to find it. But if you want to reach out to me, you're more than welcome to, because I do like to respond to emails and stuff like that too. So, but that's probably some of the best places to reach me.
Terrific. Everybody, make sure you check out Cyndi Brec and her upcoming novels, The Therans, and we will see you in a few weeks.